welcome to another edition, a special edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are streaming live from the Team Needham Abode podcast studio. And what's so special about today is it is our 500th episode of Health Solutions. 5 years ago, 2019, October 2019, we decided we wanted to start a podcast. And we did that along with KBSN Radio. And we're going to show you a quick clip of how we started this and kind of how we progressed. So here that clip is now.
And of course, I have in the studio with me my wonderful wife, Janet, who is also the producer. It's important for us as parents to not teach our kids that you have to clean your plate up. I mean, eat until you're full. Either it's wasted in the garbage can or it's wasted around our waist. And I argue this about depression all the time. The best antidepressant ever invented. I'm going to put you on the spot, Kelly. What's the best antidepressant ever invented?
There's a tie, but exercise.
There it is. Boom. Look at what a veterinarian does when they see a cow, a horse, or a dog. They know when they're sick right away. And then they don't have to take any blood work. They don't have to do any MRIs, any CAT scans, any ultrasounds. They just look at them and say, hey, this dog is sick. And what's the first thing they say, Janet? What do they ask?
Well, they ask, what are you feeding
your
animal?
What are you feeding your animal? So it matters.
Even in pharmacy, like some of the breakthroughs that we had and still have available to us, actually in the natural form, were actually healthier. So Shawn's talked about white willow bark for fevers. And we don't have the bleeding side effects from that as we do with aspirin. So there's so many things that got lost in that transition of using something that was used for centuries without any harm to somebody. And then now we have this because now we have side effects from, too much aspirin causes GI bleed. There's really a sad thing that happened when we went to that standardization.
Janet, you highlighted something very profound that I want to pick up on. The idea of willow bark. Well, what is willow bark? It is a complex combination of molecules nature combined into something.
Right.
What pharmaceutical did was say there's one molecule. There's something in this plant, and we got to figure out what the key and so-called active ingredient is, and we have to extract it, concentrate it, and put that molecule in the body. That's why all these drugs have side effects, because nature would never package something that way.
You tell me a culture that survived on plants alone. I'm waiting. I mean, seriously. Now, I will tell you a culture that survived on mostly animal-based products. Look at anybody in northern latitudes. Scandinavians, did they have a lot of greens? Did they have a lot of salad? Did they have a lot of spinach? Probably not. My wife would argue, who's much smarter than me, she would argue that they did because of trading, that there was somebody that probably traded with them and gave them some kind of plants or fruits. Mostly meat, because that's what they had.
You were saying all of the things that are just so important for people to hear.
Limitless Lindy out of Australia. She was a patient that was 700 pounds, I believe.
She was actually up to 800 pounds.
Wow. And she went carnivore and she's lost 600 pounds.
She tried everything, vegan diets, juicing, Weight Watchers. She was a food addict. I mean, she could not stop, no matter what, she could not stop. She ended up going carnivore. She's lost nearly 500 pounds. The really interesting point was she said she was a food addict. And when she went carnivore, she finally found what she called was the off switch. Like she'd never been able to turn off the intrusive desires and cravings and thoughts around food. And finally, it went silent for us.
Oh, I just want to share this message. I want to reach other 600, 700, 800 pounders and show them that this can be done. There is an out, and whether it be keto or carnivore, you can do this.
Here's the thing about carnivore. It's especially red meat. There is hardly anybody that's allergic to red meat. And if they are, there's a bigger issue going on. It's very, very, very rare. So, and there's a lot of vegetables and fruits that people can't tolerate, but almost everybody can tolerate red meat. So go carnivore and many things can go away. You don't need some fancy drug. Believe me, if you've got some kind of bowel problem, you don't need some fancy drug. Go carnivore. And if we are not honest with people and that includes many people that seek health care where most of their problems are caused by lifestyle disease. If we're not honest with them, we are not doing them no favors by just giving them another drug and saying, oh, it's okay, and love your body. And the most dangerous thing we can do as Americans is to be overweight. Cardiovascular disease from being obese causes more deaths than anything in America, period. Car wrecks, cancers, all that. So that's why I preach it. From your last episode on Joe Rogan, if there was one segment out of there that you could take away that you could give us today, what would that be?
The realization of how they're kind of habituating us into accepting ultra-processed food as healthy, natural food. That you can consume a diet that is 91% ultra-processed and still meet the healthy guidelines. I mean, to me, that's just absurd that we would be even considering that. And we see physicians out there that are like, well, these ultra processed foods are the reality, and we need to just accept it and suck it up and just shut up and take your drugs and eat your crap. I mean, it's more of the same stuff. So I think that's really eye-opening as to where we're going, because I can't think of anybody that would actually say this highly processed stuff that might have 27 ingredients, half of which I can't pronounce, are now supposed to be what I'm supposed to be eating. It doesn't make any sense. So I know there was a segment where Joe was reading from the study directly, and he was kind of blown away.
I remember watching that part too and just going, oh my gosh, it is incredible to think that is what's going to make somebody healthy. Unbelievable. If you are going to a traditional doctor that takes your insurance, they don't work for you. They work for the insurance company, period. And the insurance company tells them exactly what you get, whether it be medication, whether it be surgery, whether it be imaging. The doctor is controlled by the insurance company, and that's who they work for, because that's who pays them. So if you want to get the best care and you want to dictate that along with your doctor, then the only way to do that is pay directly without your insurance. Otherwise, the insurance company is controlling your health care. I personally don't like being controlled by anybody or anything. I definitely wouldn't want an employer or an insurance company dictating my health.
We were comfortable, but we weren't happy. We listened to how these medical doctors reached out of their comfort zone and actually got to their clients, whether it meant that they treated somebody in their car or they treated somebody in their home. I mean, how care looks to different individuals that are giving healthcare is totally different. So for Shawn and I, it was super important that we actually encourage wellness, because we felt like the model still today does not appreciate the fact that individuals can actually make decisions on making healthy choices, because food, rest, exercise are medicine to our body. And for whatever reason, we think that drugs are the only answer. Pill for every ill, which actually is just false. It's not true.
We are going on our 500th episode here, and we are super excited to be educating and empowering individuals all over the world. That's been our goal with this podcast, and we'll continue to do so.
Wow. What a journey it's been. I can tell you that still our goal is not changed from episode 1 to now, is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. And you're going to see our podcast continually progress. We're in some big transition stages right now, so stay tuned for that. As you can see, our episode number 1 was shot on a cell phone. And we were in a radio studio, KBSN radio studio, local studio here in Moses Lake. And we have to thank them for helping us get this started. And one of the reasons we have a live format to this day is because of them, because they wanted us to do a live radio show. And I really thrive on the live part of the show. It's kind of one of the reasons I like to bike race and things like that, because it's a live performance. So I like that. And that's something that's not going to go away. But you're going to see us progress. You're going to see us continually get great guests on our podcast, and just continually put out good content to educate you, the listener and viewers. Jan and I were talking yesterday just about some of the guests that we have had across the world, across the globe. So we've had guests from obviously the United States. We've had guests from Canada. We've had guests from, let's see, New Zealand, Australia, Norway. Yeah, we had a Norwegian guest just a few weeks ago. France, England, And we are just starting this podcast. We have no intentions of ever stopping, as long as we can physically get up and get to the microphone and get to a computer and stream this live. Because we really honestly have a passion for educating people. We honestly believe, and this might sound a little bit crazy, but we honestly believe that our purpose in life, that we were put on this earth to help others, to educate them, to lead a healthy lifestyle. I mean, what a better way than two pharmacists who don't believe in drugs to treat long-term disease. How powerful of a statement is that? So we think that goes a long ways when it comes to educating people on diet, exercise, and sleep, and how important those things are in their overall health. You don't necessarily need drugs to be healthy. That's for sure. Janet?
So in our conversation last night, Shawn and I were kind of reflecting as to how things have changed along the way and how fun it was. Our son was our first podcast editor, and
Yeah.
he was amazing. Jordan, I think, was 15 at the time, and technology never scared him, still doesn't. But the journey with our family has been incredible too. And that's part of the reason we're kind of passionate about this, is that we've all had something in our lives that we're very passionate about because we've lived it ourselves, like turning the picture from being unhealthy as a family to a healthy family is incredible. And it starts with a journey. And that's one of the things that brought me into healthcare, is I like to journey with people and throughout their lives and see how it progresses. And that wasn't really happening in the setting that we started with. It was actually kind of sad. People were actually getting worse. And so this is really exciting to Shawn and I to see the impact, or also hear from other people and what their stories are, and how their outcomes have been positive. I mean, if you think of somebody like Limitless Lindy, who came from being pretty much bed bound or room bound to traveling to the United States and going to conferences and being able to say, hey, there's hope. There's something else that we can do for ourselves, and turn that pivotal corner in their life and live. And I think that's one thing that's really important, is that, life can be just life, but if you live and you enjoy and you can have fun and be excited and be plugged in, I mean, that's joy. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And, another thing too is there's a lot of people, speaking of, my son was our first podcast editor, and there's a lot of people that help make our show successful behind the scenes. And somebody looks like she's watching right now. Jada, thank you so much. Jada is one of our remote team members, and she's instrumental in helping the pharmacy be successful and helping our podcast be successful, and everything in our business lives. So thank you so much, Jada, for watching and commenting. We really appreciate it. And that's just true of all of our listeners and viewers. We couldn't do it without you guys watching, without you guys sharing, without you guys engaging on our podcast. And, we've had many episodes on our podcast because listeners and viewers requested that we do a subject on something. So, please reach out, message us. We stream live on Facebook. We stream live on LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. So reach out on any of those platforms and make suggestions, make comments, share this, subscribe to it. All the podcast forums, Apple, what's the other one? Google Podcasts, all those. We're on all those podcast forums, Spotify. So please listen, watch, and share and engage, because we really like engaging with our listeners and viewers and just helping educate you on everything healthcare. And that includes the politics of healthcare. And one thing that's recently came up just recently, not really recently, but it's became big recently, is you guys have probably seen maybe or heard the Tucker Carlson interview with Dr. Casey Means and her brother Callie Means. They were on Tucker Carlson being interviewed about big food and how big food has, basically made America sick and controlled America, and, and the government's, kind of complacent in, or actually is promoting it to happen. And one thing, and I'm glad that this is getting out in the forefront, but realize this, that, Jan and I have been preaching this for 2 decades now, and we've had a podcast forum where we've been talking about it for, at least 5 years now. So that's nothing new. I'm glad that it's getting to the forefront. And we feel that we were kind of pioneers in that movement to make people realize that, just little things like don't eat processed foods. And now people at least know what processed foods are. Some little tips we have: if it doesn't rot, don't eat it. Shop the perimeter of the grocery store. Don't eat packaged foods. Don't eat foods that have ingredients in them, or they only have one ingredient. There's no really package to list the ingredients. Those are, eat real food, eat whole foods. Those are tips that we've been saying for years now. Janet?
Well, it's kind of fun, when Shawn's talking about the message of eating healthy, like real foods that, if it doesn't rot, don't eat it. But there's been other people out there, which is kind of cool, which has brought us together in a network, that there's other healthcare providers that actually stepped out of the system too. Robbie Rock comes to mind, our friend from Buffalo, New York, talking about the raw truth. And she has been living a life of nutrition and health and mind and soul. It all comes together. And it's nice to see. And actually, one of the pleasures of our job has been to actually connect physically with some of these people as well. And it's not as rare as I think our media or our world tries to paint it. That there are people out there that have been saying this alongside of us for many years, that there's a better way to do this besides just popping a pill. And I think she didn't coin the term, but we've kind of ran with it, a pill for every ill. And I still think that is true, that we got to get away from that thinking that, our body is just beautifully made and we heal. We can repair ourselves if we give it the things that it needs, whether it's sleep, proper nutrition, and exercise. But right now we're kind of living in this place where we look to somebody to solve our problems. And this is the nice thing about our podcast, is that you can take the pieces that apply to you and look at it on your own time, whether you're doing something, driving or whatever, and find the things that apply to your life, but educate yourself. And you don't have to just take our words. You can look into other people. And that's exciting. Sean Baker, for example, the carnivore diet was just kind of on the forefront, kind of catching on right when we started our podcast. And now the impact that his group is having on other people. I still remember Shawn interviewing him on the radio. And what was the question you asked him about his surgery?
Well, by training, he's actually an orthopedic surgeon. So he was an orthopedic surgeon down in New Mexico. And he started asking his patients when they would come in for surgery, he said, well, why don't you go keto and come back in 8 weeks and see what happens? And many of the patients would come back, and 8 weeks later, they not only felt better, but they lost weight. And all of a sudden they don't have knee pain or joint pain anymore. They don't need surgery. So his surgery numbers went way down, actually. And I was not surprised about that, but I was surprised about the numbers. So he actually ended up having to fight for his license because his numbers went down so much that there were some of his colleagues that didn't like that he wasn't making the hospital system money. So they filed a bogus complaint against his license, and he had to fight for that, which is kind of what happens in this. Janet and I have had issues like that in our profession because we're kind of rogue when it comes to, not promoting the traditional healthcare system. Anyway, I asked him on air, and there's a little short video of this. It's one of our most popular videos that's ever went through on YouTube. Ask him, of all the surgeries an orthopedic surgeon does, what percentage of them could be prevented if they change their lifestyle? And the number was astonishing to me. He said 70% of all orthopedic surgeries could be prevented if people change their lifestyle. That is a huge number. Think about how many ACL repairs, total knee replacements, total hip replacements are unnecessary. Total joint replacements as far as shoulders are unnecessary because, and it's not just about an injury necessarily. I get it. Sometimes for an injury, we need that. But realize most of the time, the reason people need knee replacements and hip replacements is because they're overweight. Those are just facts. And many times shoulder replacements and things like that, The reason your joints are sore is because you're not eating the right food. You change that, and all of a sudden your joints aren't sore anymore. And if you follow Shawn Baker on social media, there is report after report after report of people going carnivore, and all of a sudden they don't have knee pain anymore, or shoulder pain, or they don't have psoriasis anymore, or eczema anymore, or rheumatoid arthritis anymore, or many, many different things. Of course, all kinds of gastrointestinal diseases, whether it be IBS or reflux, those things go away. It's not, you don't need some magic medication or some magic surgery. Like Janet said, our bodies are created wonderfully. We just have to give them the right inputs.
Right. So we've also interviewed people, whether they're veterinarians, dentists, chiropractors,
Mhm.
health coaches, all the people that come into our whole life as playing together. But we had also people who've had their own health journey, and that's been very incredible to listen to people as how they achieved or got to a place. And we have a local family, the Castros,
Yeah.
whose daughter was born with seizures, and they still are journeying with with their daughter. But Lisa and Armando have been able to, with diet, make huge changes in this little girl's life. I mean, she goes to school, she gets on the school bus, and she's living life. And what traditional medicine said is she's not going to amount to anything. Like life is just over for her. She's not going to be able to move or, have a quality of any type of living life. And these parents just said, no, I'm going to look like most parents would, like, I'm not going to accept this. And diet made a huge change. I mean, to think that we were made, and all of a sudden, over the last maybe 70 years, just big pharma can tell us that we can't heal in a traditional way. It's just crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing about our podcast too is that we have 2 episodes a week now, and I learned so much by interviewing our guests. Speaking of Lisa and Amador Castro, I learned that the first thing the keto diet was ever prescribed for initially was for epilepsy. So a high fat, low carbohydrate diet was prescribed like 100 years ago, first time for epilepsy. And it can be very effective. It was before we had medications to treat disease. Same thing with type 2 diabetes, especially. We didn't have type 2 diabetes medication, all these fancy drugs to treat type 2 diabetes. So what did people do 70, 80 years ago before the drugs? They changed their diet. Type 2 diabetes does not lack medications. You do not need medications to treat type 2 diabetes. You need to change your diet and lifestyle, period. It is reversible. If there's a doctor that tells you it's not, get a new doctor. He's ignorant or lying.
Right. I think one of the things too that sits on our hearts is that medical errors is, I think, number 3.
Number 3 killer of Americans.
So, we're not saying this lightly, but the reason we talk about so much about solutions is that most of the time the solutions comes from the individual itself. Like, you need to take ownership of the situation you're in. Sure, you need tools, but we believe that the individual has the tools if they're given to them in the proper way to make the changes in their own life. And that empowers you. That's one of the things that, like Dr. Shawn Baker was talking about. Would you like to go through your whole entire life and claim, well, I'm this or I'm that, and be defined by a disease or a certain situation? No, I'd rather be defined by, I'm in charge and there's things that I can do to change my situation. Sure, not everything is solvable. We understand that. But most things that are happening across our nation and the world right now do have solutions. There's things that can be done, and they're not as difficult or as hard as we try to make them.
Well, and think about how disempowering it would be to an individual if you have high blood pressure, or you have reflux, or you have type 2 diabetes. Think about how disempowering it is that literally the drugs that you are on, you are a slave to a drug company making you those drugs. They are in charge of your life essentially, but they don't have to be, because you do not need to be on those drugs if you change your lifestyle. Your body was not created to have to take drugs to lower your blood pressure or to lower your blood sugar. Those are things that can happen by changing your lifestyle.
So true.
So be free from the system. And that's one of the things that we like to empower people to do. You know, I wrote a book. It's called Sickened: How the Government Ruined Healthcare and How to Fix It. And one of the things in the book is there's a 6-step fix of how to fix healthcare. And the first step is it's individual. So individuals need to take charge of their own health. They need to realize that they're in charge of it. And you don't want to, especially, you know, one of the things that happened over the last 4 or 5 years is I think a lot of people have realized how bad the system is and how evil the system is. And it's not there to get people well. It's there to keep people sick. So guess what? If you don't have to go through the traditional system, then don't. Take charge of your own health and you won't have to go there.
Right. So, you know, we kind of talked a little bit earlier about partnering with other people in this journey. And I like to tell people this story because I truly think that our friend Joy is just a beautiful individual. But the fact that this lady walks on this earth and shares with people still today, in her 80s, she teaches many women in our own community about how to live healthy, whether it's diet, exercise, and just sharing her belief system with them. And she's thriving. She's living life. She's stunning. I mean, I tell my clients that, you know, this lady could be on a poster and should be, because, you know, it's not just about being able to be fit and looking absolutely beautiful. It's about being in this world and living and thriving. And I think that that's something that we need to see, not just to say, well, just love yourself. Well, what does that mean? I mean, that's one thing about health solutions that Shawn and I talk about. It's not just about your image. It's about enjoying life and actually thriving in it, right? And you know, when we can see people like Lindy who left her bedroom and is out in this world and living, or someone like Joy who's helping other individuals in their journey of life, that's joy to me. That's wonderful. That's what it's all about, right? It's a solution that we share with other people. And sometimes it doesn't always come from the medical community. It comes from other people's success and how they achieved it.
And one thing I want to talk about too, it's kind of interesting how this 500 episode ended up, but also one thing that has happened this same week, October 5th, 1998, we started Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy. So 26 years ago, essentially, we started our pharmacy, and really we started it with the same principle that we have with our podcast. Is we just thought we could, you know, do something better than traditionally than what we were in our pharmacy, or what we were doing in our pharmacy careers. It was, you know, Janet and I we were either going to get out of pharmacy or we were going to do something different. And we decided to do something different. And we were so glad we did, because it's been a great journey for us. And, you know, our pharmacy has progressed over the years from being a full service pharmacy back when we opened in 1998 to realizing that really probably wasn't the direction we wanted to head. And we wanted to head more in a health and wellness direction. And that's where we're at today. So we're glad so many people have journeyed with us over the years. And I mean, there's some people that are still with us as patients from 26 years ago. And that's very touching to me, that we can, you know, touch our community and touch people all over the world for over 26 years. And one thing is not going to change as we progress in our pharmacy, as we transition this podcast, as we rebrand this podcast. Stay tuned for those things. There's one thing that's not going to change. There's a couple things that aren't going to change. One of the things is this is going to come from Janet and I's heart. Janet and I are the ones that are the drivers of this podcast, and we are not going to change that. We're also not going to stop educating and empowering individuals to take charge of their own health. That has been our motto when we opened the pharmacy, and that is still our motto today. So that part is not going to change for sure. We're just going to rebrand some stuff and hopefully do that so we can reach more people all over the world.
Yeah, well said, and exciting for us, because that's one thing that I enjoy about what we do is we are always learning something new. It may not be, huge scientific breakthrough or something like that, but we learn a lot from other people throughout the world. And so we look forward to our guests and our clients. And so this journey has really been a blast. It's been fun.
And one thing I don't want you to forget about is one of the things that we're doing annually now is our Medical Freedom Northwest Conference. And Janet talked about Robbie Raw earlier. And Robbie is actually a nurse, and she has been talking about health and wellness for 30 years. And she is going to be speaking at our Medical Freedom Northwest Conference in Spokane, Washington, the weekend of May 3rd through May 5th. So you don't want to miss out on that. Save the date. There's going to be some great speakers. Dr. Peter McCullough is going to be our keynote speaker. Dr. Scott Atlas is going to be speaking. Dr. Mary Bowden is going to be speaking. Dr. Kelly Victory is going to be speaking. So you don't want to miss out on that. So save the date. Stay tuned for registration information. We are opening it to the general public, not just medical professionals. So you don't want to miss out on that. It's going to be a great event. Janet, as we finish this podcast up, I'm gonna act like you're a guest and ask the question I ask all of our guests. What do you have a passion for?
So obviously, as a wife and a mother, I have a passion for my family. I can't stress that enough. I think our culture has tried to kick that to the street. And I'm just going to say it, that the greatest joy I have is having a family, a husband, and raising two beautiful, handsome men. They probably wouldn't like my words about that, but
they're big, strong men is what they are.
Yeah, they are. But that's been the great joy. But this journey together as a family really has been impacted by our choices and decisions, as well in our professional, to choose healthy things. And I can't express enough that when I see my kids, these young boys, men who are living and striving to be healthy, that to me is a huge accomplishment for Shawn and I. But the other part of it is, and Shawn, I'm sure, could say the same. I absolutely love other human beings, and I love being able to help them. And that's part of the reason we chose this profession. And when it wasn't working out for us, Shawn and I put our minds together and started, finding a different path. And so the journey of what it looks like to be a pharmacist for us is totally different, perhaps, than what others would think. But it's been a blessing as well, because we've been able to impact other people. It's not that we want to change other people. We want other people to be able to find what works for them. We don't want to shove things down people's throats and say, this is the only way to do something. We want people to own their own decisions and their own thoughts and how to live a life that's full, that's going to give them joy. And so I have a passion for helping other people. And I don't think Shawn and I are going to hang that up. That's going to be part of our calling for the rest of our life.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to say, just to piggyback off that, is, Janet talking about being a mom and a husband. And I will tell you, being her husband, and I say it often, Janet is the smartest pharmacist I know. But I know that first and foremost, she identifies as a mother and a wife. And that to me is one of the coolest things I can say about my wife. That is her identity, and that's okay for me. And we have used that to help others, because I think it's very important to realize, we talk about Team Needham all the time, and without her, I'm nothing. And I think it's important to realize that this is a team effort. And so when Janet says things like that, it really kind of almost chokes me up, but it makes me realize how important she is to me. And what was the other thing I was going to say about is, authentic. So one thing that we want to do too is just, if you follow us and you've been watching us, you realize that we're just, in the traditional healthcare system, sometimes there's not honesty. Sometimes there's lack of ethics, and people aren't willing to say the truth. And that's what Janet and I want to do. We want to spread the truth. We want to be authentic. We want to be real, and we want to be honest. And through educating and empowering people, we think you have to be honest with people and not tell them lies or sell them lies about something that's going to fix their health. You just got to be honest with them. And like Janet says, we love all people. We don't want to shame on anyone when we talk on our podcast. Like, we talk about obesity a lot. We don't talk about obesity to try to shame people. We talk about obesity because we love people and we want people to get healthy. It's not about shaming them. We want them to live a long, healthy life. So, see, look like we have a comment from Gail Grigg. Gail Grigg, Janet, I really appreciate how approachable you are and willing to answer our questions. It's truly appreciated.
Thank you, Gail.
That's awesome. Thank you for your comment, Gail. So that's a wrap. That's our 500th episode. We would appreciate if anybody that is watching this shares this episode. Comment if you can. Share it with people. Ask us questions. We will reply. Shelly Rose here. Yeah, we got some comments coming through. Congratulations, loves. I'm so grateful for both of you. Thank you so much, Shelly. We're grateful for you too. Yeah, so share this and have them subscribe to our podcast, because we are just getting started. I hope my marketing manager doesn't get upset with me for saying this, but Jan and I are in the process. Our marketing manager has big plans for us, and we're in the process of doing a little series on women's health. We're not doing it through our podcast. It's totally separate. But stay tuned, because there is a complete journey of women's health that we're going through from a young woman to post-menopause. And you don't want to miss out on that. It's going to be at least 10 episodes, going to be very, very educational. So you don't want to miss out on that. So stay tuned for that. Janet, what else you have? Excuse me.
Well, just thankful that people have found our podcasts educational and informative. And so we appreciate that. And we're glad that it has been a part of your lives.
Absolutely. So that's a wrap. Our 500th episode. Thank you for tuning into Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Thank you.